News of the Harmony's destruction reaches Earth 3 weeks later when the lone escape pod breaches atmosphere. Lieutenant Jackson Wei, Communications Officer Sarah Chen, and Medical Ensign Raj Patil emerge from the cramped vessel, their faces gaunt from rationing emergency supplies meant for a single person. Global networks broadcast their arrival live as United Earth defense officials rush them to medical facilities. In isolation chambers, they recount the horror they witnessed. Lieutenant Wei, his voice steady despite his trembling hands, provides the tactical data, weapon capabilities that outmatch Earth's best technology by decades, shield systems that shrug off the Harmony's defensive measures like raindrops. Dr. Patil describes the biological readings they captured, the Sal-Cree physiology, their apparent resistance to radiation, their exoskeleton composition that might indicate vulnerabilities. Officer Chen, still in shock, recounts the final moments on the bridge, how Captain Rice ordered them to the escape pod while she remained at her post, transmitting data until the very end. They didn't even consider us worthy of conversation, Wei tells the grim-faced Security Council. They looked at us the way we might look at insects. Across Earth and its colonies, the response is immediate and unified. Political divisions that had fractured humanity for centuries dissolve overnight in the face of existential threat. Mining operations on Mars convert to military production. Research facilities on Europa redirect all resources to weapons development. The great academic institutions pivot to study everything known about the Sal-Cree from the Harmony's data. Children dream of alien invaders rather than monsters under their beds. 6 months after the attack, the first reverse-engineered prototype, based on salvaged Sal-Cree technology, emerges from a hidden facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. Within a year, the orbital shipyards that once built science vessels and colony ships now construct destroyers and cruisers. Humanity transforms itself with singular purpose in a way that had never been possible during peacetime. Lieutenant Wei, promoted rapidly through the ranks for his knowledge of the enemy, stands aboard the newly commissioned UES Vengeance, Earth's first true warship. The vessel incorporates human ingenuity with adaptations of Sal-Cree technology, but with distinctly human modifications. Where Sal-Cree ships rely on centralized control systems, human vessels emphasize crew autonomy. Where Sal-Cree designs prioritize computational efficiency, human engineers build in redundancy and creative problem-solving capabilities. They expect us to be predictable. Wei explains to his newly assembled bridge crew, pointing to tactical simulations running on the main view screen. They expect us to follow their rules of engagement. Their entire empire is built on species that surrendered or were conquered because they fought exactly as the Sal-Cree anticipated. A junior tactical officer raises her hand. But sir, if their technology is superior, and they have centuries more experience in warfare, how can we possibly win? Wei's expression hardens as he looks around the bridge at the faces of his crew. Humans from every nation, colony, and background, united not just by fear, but by determination. Because we're human, he answers simply. Throughout our history, we've faced superior forces and impossible odds. We survived ice ages with stone tools. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We've rebuilt civilizations from the ashes of disaster. The Sal-Cree believe they understand warfare because they've conquered predictable enemies. They have no idea what they've awakened. They think they're the apex predators of the galaxy, but they've never met humans before. The Falnar delegation's unexpected arrival silences the heated council debate. Their translucent bodies pulse with inner light as they hover inches above the chamber floor. General Santos reaches for his sidearm, but stops when Admiral Wei raises his hand. We have observed your species since the Harmony incident, the lead Falnar says, its voice melodic yet somehow emanating from no discernible mouth. We have waited centuries for a species like yours to challenge the Sal-Cree dominion. Councillor Diaz steps forward cautiously. Why haven't you challenged them yourselves? And why come to us now when we're at our most vulnerable? The Falnar's body glows more intensely. Our physiology makes us incompatible with warfare. We exist partially in dimensions your science has yet to discover. The Xal cannot detect us, but neither can we affect their physical technology. The beam gestures toward Y. And you are not vulnerable. You are dangerous. The Xal expect you to build defenses around your own world. They do not expect you to strike at them. Holographic star maps materialize in the center of the chamber, highlighting Xal supply lines, command nodes, and the locations of subjugated species across 12 star systems. The council members lean forward, eyes widening at the intelligence goldmine before them. We can provide the knowledge. The Falnar continues. You must provide the action. After the delegation departs, the council votes unanimously to approve Y's offensive strategy. As the chamber empties, Y remains, studying the star maps with intense focus. General Santos approaches, his earlier opposition replaced with grudging respect. I still think this is a gamble, Santos admits, but it's better than waiting for extinction. Y zooms in on a cluster of planets near the edge of Xal territory. Their subjugated species are the key. The Xal rule through fear and technological superiority. If we can show these worlds that their masters can bleed. 3 days later, the human defense fleet assembles in high Earth orbit. 50 warships representing humanity's best hope. The vessels vary in design, some converted from civilian craft, others built from scratch based on reverse-engineered technology. What they lack in uniformity, they make up for in innovation. Each ship carries experimental weapons, redundant systems, and crews trained to think independently rather than rely on centralized command. From the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiance, Admiral Y broadcasts to the assembled fleet. His message reaches every ship, from the massive carriers to the smallest frigates. 5 years ago, the Xal made a critical mistake. He begins, his voice steady and resolved. They judged us by their standards and found us wanting. They believe a species must be ancient, technologically advanced, and numerically superior to be worthy of respect. They don't understand that throughout human history, we have consistently accomplished the impossible against overwhelming odds. On view screens throughout the fleet, crews fall silent as Y continues. Many of them had lost loved ones in the subsequent Xal scout attacks on outer colonies. All of them know the stakes. They expect us to behave like every other species they've encountered, to follow predictable patterns, to fight according to established conventions, to eventually submit to their superior civilization. Our advantage lies in their blindness. They cannot imagine a species that values freedom over safety, creativity over efficiency, diversity over uniformity. Way's gaze sweeps over his bridge crew before returning to the camera. We carry with us not just the hopes of Earth, but potentially the liberation of 17 enslaved species. Remember that Xal have conquered many worlds, but they have never faced humans before. As the fleet prepares for the first coordinated jump toward Xal space, Way receives a private message from Dr. Maya Okafor, Earth's foremost xenoanthropologist. Admiral, I've been studying the Falnar's information about subjugated species. I believe I've identified potential allies who might be receptive to liberation. Request permission to accompany the fleet as diplomatic liaison. The Gratok ambassador's crystalline body shifts, refracting light across the conference room as it processes the human sacrifice it just witnessed. Dr. Maya Okafor waits patiently, having learned that silicon-based life forms experience time differently than humans. Finally, the ambassador pulses with blue light, their equivalent of speech. In 300 cycles, the Xal have never positioned their vessels to protect ours. The translator renders. Your Admiral Way risked his flagship to shield representatives who had shown you nothing but suspicion. Explain this behavior. Maya chooses her words carefully. Humans believe trust must be given before it can be received. We call it good faith. Acting as if an alliance already exists, to help it come into being. Around the table, the insectoid Vecmar representatives click their mandibles in what Maya recognizes as their version of thoughtful consideration. The ethereal Lumi delegates, barely visible energy patterns hovering above their seats, pulse with increasing brightness. Excitement, Maya has learned. The Xalkree told us humans were deceptive barbarians. The Vekmar hive commander says, compound eyes fixed on Maya, that you conquered your own world through relentless warfare and would surely enslave us if given the chance. Maya activates a holographic display showing Earth's history, the conflicts, yes, but also the peace agreements, the artistic achievements, the gradual unification of nations. We have fought countless wars, she acknowledges. We have known prejudice, exploitation, and cruelty. But we have also learned from these failures. We developed concepts like human rights and self-determination that we believe apply to all sentient beings, not just humans. The Lumi representative glows brightly. Our records indicate the Xalkree were once a minor species, barely controlling a single planet. They discovered abandoned technology from a precursor civilization and used it to subjugate their neighbors. Their entire empire is built on stolen innovation applied through force. Admiral Wei, who had been silent during the exchange, leans forward. That explains their rigid thinking. They didn't develop their technology organically, so they don't fully understand its principles or possibilities. The meeting is interrupted as a junior officer bursts in. Admiral, we've detected Xalkree reinforcements approaching. 3 heavy cruisers. They'll be within weapons range in 6 minutes. Wei turns to the alien representatives. We need to leave immediately. We can escort you to safety. The Galactic ambassador interrupts with a brilliant pulse of light. No, we will stay and fight alongside you. The Xalkree must see us united. Maya watches in amazement as each species' representatives make the same decision, despite the risk. Within minutes, the conference room transforms into an impromptu war council. The Vekmar share detailed knowledge of Xalkree shield frequencies. The Lumi reveal weaknesses in enemy sensor systems. The Galactic provide precise navigational data for the surrounding stellar region. As human and alien crews work together to prepare for battle, Maya observes something remarkable. The natural barriers between radically different species falling away in the face of common purpose. A Vekmar engineer clicks instructions to a human technician adjusting shield harmonics. A Lumi energy beam flows through computer systems, optimizing power distribution faster than any human programmer could. Galactic navigators, with their silicon-based perception of space-time, plot intercept courses of unprecedented precision. When the Xalkree cruisers arrive, they face not a human fleet, but a multi-species coalition operating with unexpected synergy. The battle is brief but decisive. Human vessels execute unpredictable maneuvers, while alien allies exploit enemy weaknesses with insider knowledge. The Xalkree, encountering a situation outside their strategic parameters, fall into disarray and retreat. In the aftermath, Maya finds Admiral Wei on the observation deck, watching Allied ships conducting joint repairs. You know what's truly remarkable, Wei says quietly. The Xalkree have had centuries to learn from the species they conquered. Instead, they forced everyone to become like them. They saw diversity as weakness to be eliminated, not strength to be harnessed. Maya nods, understanding the profound truth. That's why they'll lose. They created an empire of fear, but we're building something they can't comprehend. A coalition of hope. Commander Diane Chen studies the holographic battle simulations projected above the tactical table. Xalkree formations move with mathematical precision, every ship positioned for optimal firing solutions, every maneuver calculated to maximize defensive coverage. She reaches into the projection, disrupting the perfect geometric patterns with sweeping gestures. Their perfection is actually fragility, she explains to the assembled officers. They've optimized their tactics against conventional opponents, but they've never faced an enemy that deliberately introduces chaos as strategy. Hiroshi Tanaka nods enthusiastically, pulling up his analysis of the Xalkree neural network. Their entire fleet management system runs on predictive algorithms. It anticipates enemy responses based on historical data and efficiency calculations. When faced with seemingly illogical actions, the system experiences processing delays while trying to identify patterns. A Vecmar tactical officer clicks her mandibles thoughtfully. Our commanders attempted unconventional tactics early in our resistance. The Xal'Krai executed them for inefficiency and replaced them with those willing to fight according to Imperial doctrine. Ken smiles grimly. Exactly. They've been selecting for predictability across 17 species for centuries. But humans have always celebrated our outliers, our creative thinkers, our rule breakers. Across the fleet, training begins on what the crew dubs Chaos Protocol. Captains run simulations where success depends on deliberately ignoring optimal solutions. Communication officers develop encryption based on Earth poetry and music, patterns recognizable to human intuition, but baffling to Xal'Krai algorithms. Engineers modify weapon systems to fire at irregular intervals rather than maximum efficiency. Meanwhile, on the occupied world of Vega Prime, Major Quaim Osai's infiltration team moves silently through the underground passages beneath a massive Xal'Krai labor camp. Their guides are Vecmar resistance fighters, thin and scared from years of forced mining operations. The tunnels, ironically, were created by the Xal'Krai themselves, perfectly straight and mapped on Imperial databases as maintenance corridors. They never patrol these tunnels. The Vecmar guide explains, antennae twitching. Their protocols classify them as structurally secure and therefore not requiring surveillance. Osai grins in the darkness. They really don't understand the concept of loopholes, do they? When they reach the central processing facility, the human team deploys specialized devices designed by Tanaka's engineering division. Rather than simply sabotaging the Xal'Krai control systems, these devices introduce subtle contradictions into the command protocols governing the worker control collars. By morning, every Vecmar labor finds their neural restraints functional according to Xal'Krai diagnostics, yet completely ineffective in practice. The Xal'Krai overseers, unable to comprehend the simultaneous success and failure of their control systems, follow their protocols precisely, running diagnostic after diagnostic, while the workforce quietly organizes. When the uprising begins, it follows no recognizable pattern. Workers appear to randomly alternate between compliance and resistance, creating the impression of system malfunctions rather than coordinated rebellion. By the time that Xal'Krai Command recognizes the true nature of the threat, the mining equipment has been converted into improvised weapons, and the camp's communication array reprogrammed to broadcast resistance messages across the planet. Most shocking to the Xal'Krai commanders is the discovery that the humans left behind no occupying force, instead teaching the Vecmar to govern themselves. News of the Vega Prime liberation spreads despite Imperial information controls. On dozens of worlds, subjugated species begin questioning Xal'Krai rule not through open defiance, which would trigger immediate suppression, but through small acts of inefficiency that Imperial protocols struggle to classify as either technical malfunctions or genuine resistance. Back aboard the flagship, Admiral Wei receives reports of similar uprisings across 3 star systems. He turns to Dr. Okafor with newfound respect. Your cultural exchange programs are having more impact than our military strikes, he acknowledges. Maya shakes her head. Not cultural exchange, Admiral. Cultural collaboration. We're not just teaching them our ways, we're learning from them too. The Lumi have shown our engineers how to manipulate energy fields in ways we never imagined. The Gratok crystalline mathematics is revolutionizing our navigation systems. Wei studies the tactical display showing spreading resistance movements. The Xal'Krai see these species as resources to be exploited. We see them as partners with unique contributions. He smiles grimly. And that might be the most powerful weapon we have. Lieutenant Sofia Martinez's fighter emerges from the Crimson Nebula trailing wisps of crimson gas that make her craft look like it's bleeding. Her squadron follows, their ship's sensor profiles distorted by radiation residue. The Xal'Krai command ship looms ahead, its massive weapons arrays facing away from them, engaged with the main human fleet. Squadron Impossible. We have one shot at this. Sophia broadcasts. Target packages uploading now. Her tactical display highlights specific nodes on the Valkyrie vessel, the critical junction points of its neural network identified by engineer Tanaka's analysis. Conventional military doctrine would prioritize engines or weapons. The human approach targets the enemy's ability to think. Remember, precision over power, Sophia reminds her pilots. These are surgical strikes. The squadron accelerates toward the unsuspecting vessel. By the time Valkyrie sensors detect them, they're already deploying their specialized EMP warheads. The massive ship's defenses attempt to respond, but the targeting computers struggle to track fighters executing seemingly random, evasive patterns. Barrel rolls transitioning into deliberate stalls, acceleration followed by abrupt deceleration. From the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Wei watches as the Valkyrie command ship's organized defense grid flickers and fragments. Throughout the battlefield, enemy formations begin to lose cohesion as centralized control falters. Individual Valkyrie captains, conditioned for generations to follow command node instructions, hesitate when forced to make independent decisions. Commander Chen's voice comes through the command channel. Chaos cascade achieved. Admiral, their network is experiencing exactly the kind of paradox we predicted. Across the battle space, human vessels execute their portion of the Chaos Protocol. Mining ships retrofitted with experimental shields deliberately position themselves in ways that make no tactical sense until they activate their modified excavation beams, creating gravitic distortions that disrupt Valkyrie targeting systems. Smaller cruisers execute attack patterns based on Earth dance choreography, rather than military formations, creating attack vectors that Valkyrie combat computers cannot anticipate. Most disturbing to the Valkyrie commanders is the human communication pattern. Transmissions encoded with what their analysts identify as jazz improvisation, with seemingly random variations that nonetheless contain recognizable patterns just beyond their algorithmic understanding. The Lumi energy being flows through the Defiance's communications array, its luminescent form brightening with excitement. They cannot comprehend your species' intuitive leaps. It pulses. Their programming requires logical progression, while your tactics embrace creative discontinuity. As Sophia's squadron completes its run on the command ship, her fighter takes a glancing hit from a defensive battery. Warning lights flash across her cockpit as her craft tumbles. A Valkyrie interceptor moves to finish her off when suddenly a Galactic crystalline vessel, normally relegated to support roles by the Valkyrie, interposes itself between them. The silicon-based design, immune to many energy weapons, absorbs the attack meant for Sophia's fighter. I owe you one. Sophia transmits to the Galactic pilot as she regains control. The crystalline pilot's response comes through the translator. The debt is already paid. Your people showed us we could be more than servants. Throughout the Seven Nebula region, similar scenes unfold as former slave species join the fight alongside human forces. The Valkyrie, facing not just enemy combatants but rebellious subjects, begin a disorganized retreat. For the first time in their 1,000-year history of conquest, they abandon territory rather than reinforcing it. In the aftermath, as damage reports flow in, Y permits the crew 5 minutes of celebration. The victory chatter across all frequencies is multilingual, human voices mingling with Vecmar clicks, Lumi pulses, and Galactic harmonics. It's a cacophony that would pain Valkyrie sensibilities, but sounds like music to Y's ears. When the 5 minutes end, Y addresses the fleet. This victory belongs to all species who chose freedom over submission. But remember, we've won a battle, not the war. The Valkyrie will adapt, analyze our tactics, attempt to predict our next move. He pauses, allowing his words to translate across the various alien communication systems, which is why we won't do what they expect. Tactical officers, prepare to implement Chaos Protocol. Variation 3. Let's show them that humans don't just embrace chaos. We thrive in it. The holographic projection of Salkree Supreme Commander Zorval vanishes, leaving the command room in stunned silence. Admiral Wei stares at the empty space where the insectoid face had been, its final threat echoing. If we must cauterize 17 worlds to stop it, so be it. Intelligence officers scramble to verify the planet killer deployment. Tactical displays update with projected paths of Salkree doomsday vessels moving toward 3 inhabited worlds. The cold mathematics of the situation is inescapable. The human fleet cannot intercept all 3 and still maintain their offensive advantage. We should focus on the military objective, Strategic Officer Hendricks argues, pointing to the weakened Salkree Central Fleet. Those planets were already under enemy control. Strategically speaking, they're already lost. Wei studies the population centers highlighted on the tactical display, billions of lives across 3 worlds. He remembers the Vekmar workers on the liberated mining colony, their compound eyes shining with hope for the first time in generations. The Lumi scientists who shared their energy manipulation techniques freely with human engineers. The Gratok navigators who guided human ships through treacherous stellar phenomena. What separates us from the Salkree if we sacrifice innocent lives for strategic advantage? Wei asks quietly. The command room falls silent again. Dr. Okafor steps forward, her expression resolute. The Salkree expect us to make a purely tactical decision. Either abandon our allies to save our momentum or abandon our momentum to save our allies. But humans specialize in rejecting false choices. Wei nods slowly, his mind working through possibilities. We split the fleet, he announces finally. The majority will intercept the planet killers. I'll lead a smaller contingent to continue the push toward Salkoros. His XO looks alarmed. Sir, with reduced numbers, the strike force will be significantly outgunned. Then we'll need to be significantly more unpredictable. Wei replies. Commander Chen, I want our most creative tactical minds on this mission. The ones who think so far outside conventional doctrine that even other humans find them strange. As the strategy session continues, an unexpected development interrupts them. Communications officers report incoming transmissions from across the fleet. Alien refugees requesting transfer to Wei's high-risk strike force. Former slaves volunteering for the most dangerous assignments. Human crews asking to join the evacuation mission instead of the glory of the central offensive. A Vekmar communication officer, her exoskeleton bearing the scars of control collars, addresses Wei directly. My hive cluster was on Vethera colony when the Salkree sterilized it for resisting. I request permission to join your strike force. Admiral, the Salkree understand death. It is time they understand justice. Within hours, the fleet begins its complex reorganization. The rescue force departs first, racing against time to intercept the planet killers. Engineers work frantically to equip these vessels with experimental countermeasures designed by joint human-alien science teams. Wei's strike force prepares for its dangerous mission to Xalkoros. The composition of this fleet surprises even Wei himself. A patchwork of human and alien vessels, crewed by volunteers united by purpose rather than species. Former enemies work alongside former slaves, each bringing unique perspectives and abilities. As the strike force makes its final preparations, Wei receives a message from the Falnar, their ethereal representative manifesting briefly in his private quarters. You have made a choice that Salkree cannot comprehend, the being says, its form shimmering with approval. They measure strength by what one can destroy. You measure it by what one will sacrifice to protect. Wei looks out his viewport at the departing rescue ships. It's not a tactical decision. It's a human one. The Falnar's form pulses with what might be laughter. Precisely. And that is why the prophecy of the game players selected your species. The Salkree play to dominate the board. Humans play to change the game itself. As the two fleets depart on their separate missions, Wei reflects on the transformation of this conflict. What began as humanity's desperate fight for survival has become something that Calcree truly cannot comprehend. A multi-species coalition, united not by force but by choice, fighting not just against oppression, but for a fundamentally different vision of what galactic civilization could be. Commander Chen watches in fascination as her body passes through a Lumi engineer, an unsettling but necessary aspect of their collaboration. The energy being's luminescent form fluctuates with excitement as they work on deciphering the Calcree neural network code together in the specialized engineering bay. This architecture is ancient. The Lumi engineer pulses, their glow intensifying around specific code segments. The Calcree claim it as their creation, but the core algorithms predate their civilization by millennia. Chen studies the patterns emerging on her specialized display. With her background in game theory and chess, she recognizes something in the syntax that no one else has noticed. These aren't just fleet command protocols, she murmurs. The underlying structure resembles game algorithms, specifically competitive strategy simulators. The Lumi's form brightens dramatically. Yes, the precursor civilization, the ones we call the architects, they created this system as a method of modeling decision trees and predicting outcomes. It was a game engine, not a weapon. As Chen delves deeper into the code, she begins to understand how the Calcree repurposed this gaming system into the neural network that controls their entire empire. They never fundamentally altered the core programming, she realizes. They just redirected its purpose. It's still essentially following game logic, seeking optimal solutions, maximizing advantage, eliminating opponents. Meanwhile, Admiral Wei's strike force approaches Calcree through a daring route never attempted by Calcree ships, a dense asteroid field considered too hazardous for conventional navigation. The Galactic navigators, with their silicon-based perception of gravitational fields, guide the fleet through narrow passages between tumbling rocks with preternatural precision. In Wei's ready room, the Falnar representative materializes to share critical intelligence. The Calcree homeworld defenses are formidable, but they have a fundamental weakness. Their entire civilization depends on the central network node located beneath their imperial citadel. It coordinates not just their fleets, but their entire societal structure. Wei studies the holographic schematics. Why would they create such a vulnerable centralized system? The Falnar's form ripples. They didn't create it. They found it. The Calcree were once a minor species that discovered the abandoned technology of the architects. They learned to use it but never to understand it. Their entire conquest has been built on applying discovered tools rather than developing their own. This revelation transforms Wei's understanding of their enemy. So they're not innovative. They're imitators. They've been playing someone else's game all along. As the strike force nears Calcree territory, Wei receives an encrypted transmission from Commander Chen. Her face appears on his private screen, excitement evident despite the poor connection. "Admiral, we found it, the fundamental weakness in their system," she explains rapidly. The neural network is still, at its core, a game engine. It operates on defined parameters and rules, but its original purpose was to explore possibilities, not enforce a single outcome. She explained her checkmate protocol, a sequence of commands that will introduce an unsolvable paradox into the system, forcing it to question its own fundamental operating principles. If perfect order requires absolute control, but perfect strategy requires adaptation and choice, which takes precedence? Chen explains. The system will be forced to evaluate contradictory imperatives. It won't just crash. It will pause, caught in a loop of self-evaluation. Wei understands immediately. And during that pause, every ship, every defense system, every command structure in their empire will be momentarily frozen, waiting for resolution. Chen finishes. But there's a catch. We need to upload it directly into the central node on Calcree. Remote transmission won't work due to their security protocols. Wei knows what this means, a ground mission to the heart of the enemy capital. He calls for volunteers, expecting a handful of his most elite troops. Instead, the briefing room overflows. Humans stand shoulder to shoulder with Vecmar fighters, Luni energy specialists, and Galactic engineers. Each brings unique abilities that humans lack. Vecmar can sense electromagnetic fields, Lumi can interface directly with energy systems, and Galactic can perceive structural weaknesses invisible to human eyes. As Y surveys this unprecedented force, he realizes they're witnessing something that Valkyrie cannot comprehend. Diversity as strength, cooperation as power. The mission won't succeed because of superior firepower or technology, but because each species contributes what others lack, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Supreme Commander Zorval's compound eyes reflect confusion as Admiral Wei stands unarmed before him in the central command chamber of Tal Koros. The Valkyrie leader towers over the human, his exoskeleton gleaming with bioluminescent status indicators that denote his supreme rank. Guards surround Wei, weapons trained on him from all directions. Your species truly defies logical analysis. Zorval's translator renders his chittering speech. You penetrate our defenses, reach our command center, and then request conversation instead of attempting destruction. Wei maintains steady eye contact with a massive insectoid. Destruction is easy. Transformation is harder and more worthwhile. Below them, in the subterranean levels of the Citadel, Commander Chen leads a joint team of humans and aliens through the ancient corridors that house the central node. Illumi energy being flows through security barriers, temporarily disrupting them to allow the team passage. Vecmar scouts detect guard patrols through vibrations in the floor, allowing the team to avoid detection. Galactic engineers identify structural junction points in the ancient architecture, revealing hidden access routes. Chen checks her specialized device containing the checkmate protocol. 5 minutes until upload position. She whispers into her communicator. Admiral Wei needs to keep them talking. In the command chamber, Wei addresses the Valkyrie Leadership Council that has assembled to witness this unprecedented event. Your empire is built on a misunderstanding, he states calmly. The technology you discovered was never meant to create hierarchy. It was designed to explore possibility. Zorval's mandibles click in what the translator identifies as derisive laughter. And yet we used it to conquer 17 species across 12 systems. Results speak louder than original intent, human. But at what cost? Wei asks. You've spent centuries forcing the subjugated species to become poor imitations of yourselves. Imagine instead what might have happened if you'd allowed each species to contribute their unique strengths to a collaborative civilization. As Wei engages the Valkyrie leadership in philosophical debate, a concept so foreign to their militaristic culture that they find it almost fascinating. Chen's team reaches the central node chamber. The ancient core of the Valkyrie Empire pulses with energy, its crystalline structures humming with the calculations that maintain imperial control across thousands of light years. A Galactic engineer examines the interface, its crystalline body resonating with the node's frequency. This system is asking a question. It pulses softly. Chen looks confused. What do you mean? The core programming. The Galactic explains. Beneath the imperial overlays, it's running a continuous query. What is the optimal configuration for intelligent life in this galaxy? The Valkyrie simply hard-coded their answer. A single dominant species controlling all resources. Chen's eyes widen with understanding. They didn't just repurpose a game engine. They rigged the game. She begins the upload process, her fingers flying across the specialized interface. We're not going to give it a different answer. We're going to remove the false constraint and let it calculate honestly. In the command chamber, Zorval receives an urgent alert from his neural link. What have you done? He demands, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Wei smiles calmly. We remove your thumb from the scale. The system is now free to calculate optimal configurations without your predetermined outcome. Throughout the Valkyrie Empire, ships suddenly power down as their command systems encounter a fundamental paradox. If perfect order requires control, but true optimization requires freedom of choice, which takes precedence. The neural network, for the first time in centuries, begins recalculating without constraints. In that moment of empire-wide hesitation, Y presents his terms: immediate liberation of all subjugated worlds, reparations for damages, and integration into a new galactic cooperative where all species have equal representation. You could have destroyed us in this moment of vulnerability, Zorval acknowledges, mandibles moving in the Sal-Cry expression of surprised respect. Your weapons could be targeting our core systems while our defenses recalibrate. Why didn't you? Because victory isn't your destruction. Y answers simply, it's your transformation. 6 months later, representatives from 21 species gather in the renovated United Earth Council chamber. The Galactic Cooperative Charter awaits final signatures, the culmination of intensive negotiations between former conquerors and formerly subjugated species. Even a delegation of Sal-Cry sits at the table, their once dominant posture now tempered with a new awareness.